The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we'll review a 6-point week at home for Austin FC, including victories over Houston and Sporting Kansas City. We'll also preview the San Jose match this weekend with Apple TV's Heath, Pearce. And then we also have some breaking news as of about, 30 minutes ago, and there's more coming out as we go about Emiliano Rigoni. Tom Bogert is reporting that he's been placed on waivers by Austin FC. We'll get into that here in a moment about what all that means and for Rigoni and for Austin FC going forward. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. Yeah, and you're dead on this news. So I think we each have a note to ourselves to check back on Twitter at some point while we're recording this, and whatever we say at the beginning of the show may be obsolete by the time we reach the end of the show. But what a newsy and exciting week. I just feel like this cloud of enthusiasm over all of Austin FC fandom, sort of given how the games turned out and this news. So why don't you go through what we know as of what we believe to know, Tom Bogert official, which as we know is pretty much official, about this Emiliano Rigoni situation right now.
Yeah, so the Bogert tweet reads, Austin FC has placed DP winger Emiliano Rigoni on waivers, sources tell Paul Tenorio and me. And then followed up with a quote tweet shortly after that saying, Rigoni had a clause in which his contract for 2025 auto-triggered if he made 12 appearances in 2024. He has played 11 times this year, which is Bogert is pointing out that that's why this is happening right now. It's because if he plays one more time, thank you, Claudio Reyna, then his contract would be auto-triggered. I've been saying, people have been bringing up, what if Rigoni has an auto-trigger in his contract? And I was like, surely not. And surely if there is, it's something difficult to achieve. 30 appearances or 15 goal contributions, but 11 appearances or 12 appearances, good Lord. I don't know that Claudio Reyna was gonna get another job in this sport, but as news gets around about the Ring deal and this one, which is even worse, this man's never gonna work not in that kind of job in this sport again. He might find something, but he's not going to be in charge of signing players ever again.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty evident thing. So let's talk through what we know or believe to know about the waiver part of this. So Rigoni is theoretically a player on waivers, which means that any team, he's now available to any MLS club beginning the first business day after clubs are notified. Basically, anybody who wants Emiliano Rigoni's contract can pick up Emiliano Rigoni's contract. I don't think that we expect that anybody will be super in love with picking up Emiliano Rigoni's contract at the current level. So what does this mean in the real world?
Yeah, I'm looking through the rest of the rules. I found another place where it's under the buyout rules that say before a player is considered a buyout, the league in its discretion may place the player on waivers to be made available to all clubs. And so, although we're in the waivers state right now, this very well might be just the first step in buying out his contract. And so either way, it seems like Rigoni is going to be gone. There is one part about the waiver rules that I'm still a little murky on. If you read through them, like Jeremiah said, the basics of waivers is Austin FC says, if anybody wants this guy, you can have him. You just have to pay his salary. And if nobody wants him, then they can still buy him out at that point. If they do want him, there's a part of the roster rules that reads essentially like it's a bit of an auction where a team can make an offer as to how much of his salary, his budget charge they're willing to pick up. And then another team can make another offer, and whatever the best one is, they'll go with. What it doesn't say in those rules is, say a team does pick him up at a discount, is Austin FC then stuck with the rest of his budget charge? That's the part that I'm not clear on.
which that part makes it, I mean, less of an appealing deal to Austin, and maybe less likely that Austin would go out and get an immediate replacement. Although, half an hour ago, I think along with other people, were like, well, this clearly shows Austin's making a move in the summer. And then we got the second Boker tweet, and now maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe we'll find out something else about it. But yeah, either way, I think the summary is the Emiliano Rigoni era in Austin is over. Seems like a great dude, good guitar player. Not particularly productive on the field, and never looked comfortable, or I just never looked comfortable or happy, on the field, or didn't seem like it. At least he never really fit into the scheme. So good for Austin for moving on from that.
Yeah, and so for what it means for Austin going forward is we're all kind of hoping that at the very least they would buy down Alex Ring and sign a designated player. We're gonna. I didn't mention this in the opening. We also have new salary. The new salary release from the MLS Players Association. So we'll get into that a bit more. With that, the roster profiles that MLS released recently, it seems very likely that Austin's going to have plenty of money to buy down Alex Ring. With Emiliano Rigoni on the way out as well, they could potentially sign 2 new DPs this summer. And so with as good as the team is playing right now, and still missing some of that high-end talent, right? If they can bring in that high-end talent and even kind of integrate them by the end of the season, that gives me a lot of hope for this team. Things don't always go perfectly. We shouldn't expect them to, but they can only be better than what the Reyna administration did with some of these contract clauses.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think it probably sort of transfer into the week, because I think one of the things, even before today, that became, I feel like, very evident over the last few weeks is that, one, I feel like Roto kind of undersold what the effects of what he was going to be able to do during the winter, because we came into this season thinking his hands are tied, there's no money, nothing's going to happen. And now we've got, 4 players that came in during this offseason already. This is before another guy we'll talk about in the summer, at least one more. Obrian, Rubio, Heinzike, Biru, all better than who they replaced. And so even before today, I feel like while there's a lack in high-end attacking quality, and Rigoni wasn't the answer there, the floor is a lot higher than it was. And I think you see this in a week like this week, where Austin plays 3 games in 8 days and has to manage minutes and do some substitutions and stuff. That they do have the players to be able to make those moves and not have a lot of drop off. The center back depth is as strong as it's ever been. I think the fullbacks are about to be that way too. The midfield's pretty deep. Other than an attack, Austin has options, and that has not always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of why Austin has looked so good in this last handful of games, or at least better. It's not always been good in every game, but much better than what we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. I think we have to talk about Dani Pereira. His game against Sporting Kansas City was absolutely phenomenal, and we'll get into that as we kind of dive into the specifics of it. But I already thought before that game that just the last, Driussi came back from injury, right? And that was part of the change. Around that same time is when we moved Dani back to the 6. And about that time is also when I thought Dani just really started to turn his game up to the next level a little bit. And that really showed in this Sporting Kansas City game. We'll talk about a little bit the difference in positions, but I think that aside, just defensive mindset and just seeing the game quicker on that end, because offense hasn't always been the problem, right? He's been quite proficient on that end of the ball. Defensively, his reading the game, his fitness, his speed, his aggressiveness without going too far and getting cards, he's just really stepped up his game. And we've been talking about this for years at this point, right? If Dani can make that next step, he's gonna go on to do big things. He'll be a big sale to Europe. I had stopped believing that. I didn't believe we were going to sell Dani to a big European team. At the very most, maybe a mid-tier Portuguese team, or to Belgium, or a lower tier Dutch team or something like that. if he, from the last 5 or 6 games, the amount he's improved in that little stretch, if he can continue that, or even just keep playing at the level he has the last handful of games, like that comes back onto the table.
Yeah, and the other thing that we saw from him, this was a little bit during the offseason, where he kind of got featured more in the on social media and things. Like there's some development of sort of like leadership and maturity that we've seen of him too, and I think that's like echoed. You see the echo of that in his play, but it's just like, yeah, Danny's kind of grown up. Now you did call him still a little stinker, I think, today in some Slack,
because he is.
But true, in a positive and good natured way. He's like the yes.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive though, and I think like probably Diego Rubio was a bit of a little stinker when he was younger, and he's learned to use that and to channel it into like still being able to be a leader, be a positive impact in his team and in his locker room. I don't think it's a bad thing that Dani Pereira is a little stinker. I think it's fun and probably like brings a lot of joy to the locker room, but combining that mindset with being a professional, taking your craft seriously, and like training like a pro, living like a pro, that's where a lot of people will say like that's the next step, is like you taking this seriously, having the mentality to like suffer through the difficult and boring life that it takes for you're sacrificing having fun or doing these other things or having these other experiences that people get to have if they're not an athlete, and like accepting that and just kind of taking that on is part of what makes these great people so great. And I think you can do all those things and still be just like a fun guy to have around.
Yeah, I mean, and what a delight he has been because of that. And then, so I think we've talked about a 6-point week. I imagine anybody listening probably knows that Austin won both matches, but we get the 1-0 win over Houston, 3-2 over Sporting KC. I think that one common thing among both these matches is Austin loses possession battle in both. I think we had 41% in the Houston match, 42 in SKC. Win both matches fairly convincingly, I feel like, against Kansas City. Like I didn't feel like that one was in a lot of doubt, even though Kansas City scored first, and had higher X goals for over both matches too, which means whatever it means, but it kind of shows that it's not a fluke. So is this seems like a trend now at this point in time where Austin is playing the game differently than they have in the past, and I think it's a credit to Coach Wolf.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the one thing that I noticed on my rewatch of the Houston game, and listeners, please bear with us. We're doing 2 games today. I take a lot of notes and spend a lot of mental energy reviewing these games. When I have to do it twice, things get real blurry real fast. But so if I say the wrong thing happened in the wrong game, please be patient with us. But during the Houston game, that was the first one, right?
Right.
The midweek game against Houston. There's a moment where we are playing out of the back. I felt like the back line and Stuver did a really good job of being patient and kind of playing that chess match with Houston's press, because Houston was not just running around with their hair on fire. They were waiting for that first pass and then springing traps. And the center backs and Stuver were very patient and very mindful of what Houston was trying to do and making sure that whatever they did didn't play straight into what Houston wanted them to do. And as they were doing that, Stuver and Julio, like just a really good job of playing that little game there. There's a moment really early in that game where they break the press, find Driussi in a little pocket, and he turns and starts driving, and Josh Wolf is yelling at him about 15 yards away so he could hear him saying, go, 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 go. Like, to turn up the field, play vertically, drive at that back line after you break that first line. And that is a thing that, like, we've not seen them do that. We've never seen Wolf gesture like that in those moments. It seemed like they were all very happy to, once they break that line, okay, let's set up and just play with the ball a little bit. It's like, that's not what's happening in this last stretch, that things have changed so much. they are trying to, once they get in that space, play vertically, play more aggressively in those moments. And I think that's part of why we're seeing these possession numbers go down. Is it's not that we're booting it long and giving up the ball. It's just that we're playing faster and getting the ball into those spaces a lot quicker. And which I think pairs up a bit more with the defensive game plan, being a bit more stingy. And then once you get past those moments, play a bit more aggressively and try to go quickly in those areas.
Well, how about let's take a break and then we can get into the details of each of these matches.
Yeah, let's do it.
When no one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment, so check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FVF.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FVF.law.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. Fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden, serving New York-style pizza and authentic Italian. Now open in Round Rock in front of Del Diamond and on Anderson Lane near Shoal Creek Boulevard.
The Anderson Lane Beer Garden is just 2 miles from Q2 Stadium. Stop by for a pizza and a pint before all this year's home games. And with TVs on every wall, it's the perfect spot to watch all away games. They play all Austin FC games with sound on.
Let's talk to you about a couple May promos. Again, 30 beers on the tap this month, featuring the Brewery of the Month Austin East Ciders and our pineapple cider. The pizza of the month is prosciutto and pear with gorgonzola, honey, and arugula. And as every month, you can get 2 for Tuesday, 2 pizzas for the price of 1 every Tuesday, and Pitcher Perfect Thursdays, half-price pitchers of beer every Thursday.
Dine in or pick up for lunch or dinner at Tony C's Pizza and Beer Garden. Check them out online at TonyC'sBeerGarden.com. All right, we are back. We're going to start off with the Houston Dynamo match. Jeremiah, where should we start here?
Well, let's start. So Austin, after the loss in Dallas, was still leading the Copa Tejas table, but a result versus Houston at home was needed to stay in the driver's seat in that. And also just generally, if Austin was going to have any ambition for this year, this is the kind of match that you have to win at home. I think the other big question, which we're going to see in the lineup and the way it played, was like, would we see rotation knowing there's a game Saturday, this one Wednesday, and then one upcoming against Sporting Kansas City on Saturday, and also the health of Biru and Finley, both listed as questionable for both matches this week. So it gives an indication that we probably weren't going to see Biru. So the lineup we get then is Stuver, Coleman, not surprisingly, at fullback, then Heinzike and Cascante, which are kind of nailed on with Gallagher, Ring, Danny, and Driussi in the midfield. Also pretty common rotation there. And then without Finley, we get Rigoni, Rubio, and Obrian up top. So not really very surprising. I think almost the exact same lineup, if not the same lineup that we saw against FC Dallas. So we roll it out. Austin, Rubio, I think it's like 19 seconds into the match, almost has a spanger of a goal. Hits the post.
Yeah, that one was beautiful. It was that one. Did that one not feel like a very Maxi Urruti moment to you?
I mean, for where it came from and the ambition of it, absolutely, it did. It wasn't 14 rows high in the stands, which is a little bit of a Maxi Urruti moment a lot of times. But yeah, just sort of creation almost out of nowhere and a lot of ambition on that shot. It would have been amazing if that would have gone in.
John Colemanich slots in at fullback for the injured Biru. This was one of the biggest concerns for me coming into this week, was the drop down from Biru to Colemanich. Colemanich gives the ball away, like trying to dribble through some players out of the back. This is like a minute 40 into the game. Gives the ball away at the edge of the box, forces a Brad Stuver save. I think this is the Kowalczyk one. Like, this is probably the biggest save of the game, where he drops down super quick, gets a finger or two to it, and just redirects it off of goal. But it's like spinning on the ground. And so it's one of those tricky ones where even if you get a touch, it might still kind of curve in. But after that point, and even into this next game, I thought Kolmanich was solid. Like, I was really happy with the way he played. I think he's still overall a downgrade from Biru, but whenever he's playing like this, it's not that big of a downgrade. And that's great. Like, we need that from him at this point in time. And I think he gave it to us.
Yeah, he had a pretty solid performance, and luckily, in maybe a month or so, we won't have to worry as much about the depth at fullback. And then, the rest of the first half, I didn't realize this watching it until I went back afterwards. But Austin actually had 0 shots on goal in the first half because Rubio hit the crossbar, and then Alex Ring did too, right? I think Ring bounced one.
Yeah, the 21st minute, Rigoni plays across into the top of the box, and Ring kind of jumps at like the edge of the 18 and just redirects it with a side foot, and it sneaks past Steve Clark and goes off the post and goes out. But yeah, that was a pretty dangerous moment there too. It's funny, I didn't think about those not counting as shots on target.
Yeah, they're not. So if you look at the momentum charts, there's a lot of green for Austin in the first half. Like I said, no shots on goal, although I think Austin outshot Houston 6-5. Austin actually had the lead in possession in the first half. Go to the half. We get another early. This is an earlier CJ Fodre sub to try to create some offense. So he comes on at 56.
But he was warming up at halftime and
That's right,
had his jersey ready. Like, he was going to come on at the half, and ends up waiting until 56. But yeah, got a good little run out during this game.
We get the scariest possible sub. Hector Herrera comes in at 61 for Houston. I feel like, although the results don't show it, he does change the game. There are nervy moments once he gets onto the field and starts creating with that midfield. And then we get Giassi in, and then this. I wanted to ask just kind of what you thought about the sub in the moment. At 77, we get Hector Jimenez, Leo Weissman, Owen Wolf, all 3 subbing in. And for me, it felt a little bit like today's not going to work out the way we wanted it to. Maybe we'll get a draw, maybe we won't. But we want to not risk Saturday's performance. And that's why these guys all come on. Because Houston had a lot of possession. Houston had all the momentum. Austin wasn't doing a whole lot. And I didn't really get the expectation that this set of subs were going to change the way the game flow went.
Yeah, I think part of this being, we talked about this with Alex Ring during the Dallas game. We were down 2-0 and knew we had 2 more big home games coming up. So I think that's partly why they subbed him out. Again, looking at this one here, get 60 out of Ring. And we heard Josh Wolf talk about it after these games about trying to be mindful of minutes in these games. And I think, like you said before, just we have players who can come in and not be a huge drop off. And my mom said after the Kansas City game, she said, last year when we make a substitution, it made me want to puke because I knew that they were going to be much worse than who was just on the field. And I don't feel that way this year. Just, I think, a very good observation from my mother. But yeah, bringing on Owen for Ring, it's a drop off in certain ways, but it's like an uptick in other ways, right? Hector for Kolmanich, same thing. Leo for Julio, same thing. These people are all better and worse at certain things, but overall, their final FIFA score is not so different from one another. And so
Absolutely.
Julio's on a yellow and has played a bunch in these games. Okay, let's pull him. Let's not risk a nervy game where Houston has some speed and has not really a striker and they're pulling the center backs into the midfield a lot. Let's not risk getting the second yellow. Let's get him some rest. Leo comes in, does a pretty good job. The same for Owen, the same for Hector. So yeah, really good as far as just rotating, managing these minutes, managing game states, and not changing too much whenever you bring these guys in.
Yeah, and I think we could talk about him now because in a limited amount of time, Giassi Zardes, what you mentioned I think was it last week that he still has some things that are really, really that he does really well that don't tend to lead to goals for this club. And he did some of those things, and he did a thing really, really well that did lead to a goal for this club. There in the 87th minute when Sebastian Driussi picks up the only goal of the match.
Yeah, this is like such a good example of things that Gyasi Zardes is good at that a lot of people don't notice or don't believe you when you tell him that that he's good at these things. But there was a game, what was this, the last San Jose game when Driussi scores from the top of the box super late?
Yes, that's last San Jose game was a 90 plus 11 is when he scores the game-winning goal.
And so if this is the one that I'm thinking of, Gallagher plays a cross in, seems kind of hopeful and maybe misplaced, but Zardes is able to get a foot on it, knocks it down. Driussi buries it from 19 yards out. After that game, the comms team did an interview with Zardes talking about this play, and he says, throughout the game as I was watching it, I noticed these center backs were winning crosses and kind of owning that part of the field. So when I went in, I said, I'm going to make sure that they don't do that. And if nothing else, like, I'm going to control this one guy. And in that goal, he controls that guy, gets a foot on the ball, and Driussi is able to knock the shot down. In this one, 87th minute against Houston, the Rigoni ball comes in, there's chaos. And from my seats, I mean, I saw chaos, and then Driussi swing his leg, the back of the net ripples. That's all I could tell that happened. Watching this replay, you see that Zardes is pinning back Mikael, their big center back. He has him pinned down. He's got Bartlow pinned behind him as well. And that whole jumble is kind of blinding the keeper, Steve Clark. And so he like gets a head on it. It bounced off his head, off of Mikael's chest, and then falls to Driussi. And Driussi is like did you ever watch The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary?
Yes.
There's this part where they interview Dennis Rodman, and they're asking him like, why were you so good at rebounds? And he just goes on this like nonsensical rant. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, yes.
I'll slice in a little clip of it here.
I just practice a lot about the angle of the ball and the trajectory of it. You got a Larry Bird, it's going to spin. You got a Magic, and maybe spin. When Michael shoot over here, I position myself right there. Now I hit the rim, it's boom, click and go back this way, boom, here, click and go that way, boom, that way, click here and go back this way. So basically, I just started learning how to put myself in a position to get the ball.
Rebound, kept alive by...
But I feel like Driussi is like Dennis Rodman in that, like, I don't know if he could articulate why he's able to do this, but he just knows where the ball is going to end up. And so that ball falls to him. He slaps it in. But watching this replay, if you go back a few seconds before Rigoni takes this corner, Gyasi Zardes is standing in the box, just kind of floating around. And as Rigoni approaches the ball, he jumps in front of Mikael to pin him back. And so this was not a mistake where like, oh, this is where he ended up and he just like tried to be big and strong and hold the guy back. He's like, no, he planned the whole time. I'm going to pin this guy here. And like, again, these are these little intangible things that Gyasi Zardes still has to offer and still lead to really good moments sometime.
Yeah, and that's basically it. So Austin wraps it up. 1-0 win. Moves up in the Western Conference table. I can't remember exactly what spot they're in as of midweek, which probably doesn't matter all that much. I had a few player notes. One we kind of touched on, like Alex Ring did a really good job of getting into dangerous places. He had the one ball off the post. He launched one ball like a moon ball into the stands at one point. So he did some Alex Ring sort of in the final third things. We talked about Gyasi, talked about Stuver had not a ton of saves, but the ones he had were important. He came up big and important in the moments. And I think John Gallagher, who's been pretty quiet, had a really good match too. And I know Coach Wolf talked about his performance and sort of the things that he does that nobody else does on this team in the post-game press conference.
What about these subs? So we saw Zardes for 30-ish, Fodre for over 40 minutes. I thought he was again, like physicality wise, he brings things that other people on this team just can't do. I'd still like to see a bit more from Fodre as far as just like engaging in the game when he's not on the ball. I think talking about Rigoni being like not delivering anything on the offensive half, I think defensively Rigoni has been above average as far as just like staying focused and being part of that team defense that has been so effective. I think he's been solid there. I think Owen does the same thing. I'd like to see Fodre step up some of those parts of his game. But I'm glad he got this run out and got to show some of his gifts and still be useful in this game. But I think there's like other people on the team are still a lot better at a lot of other parts of the game, and I think he needs to improve those things before he's going to be like in the conversation to start any of these games.
Well, and the other Leo Väisänen, it's good to see him get some minutes. Honestly, I think it was when he was like just in the sports bra and like didn't have his number on. I was like, who is this guy? Like I forgot he existed until he threw the 15 on. I was like, oh yes, Leo Väisänen, he's back. He did.
I remember
he
him.
He got a half on Saturday too. I thought he looked pretty decent. He said, gosh, went from being probably the number one center back to like a valuable depth piece over the course of 11 matches.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in both these games that he was the first choice over Hedges as well. Even coming back from injury, probably working into fitness still, that he was the guy that they threw on instead of Matt Hedges then.
Yep. So I think you want to let's talk about Sporting KC now. It seems like it's time to do
let's
that.
go over. Let's do a quick Copa Teos recap before we move on.
Oh, okay. Let's do that.
So
do you have the stuff in front of you? I did not look it up.
I mean, there's a lot of. I think Lincoln Rose posted all of the scenarios on Twitter the other day. I won't bore you all with every scenario, but essentially, if Austin beats Dallas or draws Dallas, then we're good. Like it's done.
And this is in July, right? July 17th or something, I think, is the next
Yeah,
time
whatever that last game away in Frisco is. If we win or draw, it's over. We win it. And so that's the easiest way forward. I don't think there's even a way that we can win it if we lose that game. And so it essentially becomes the final right there. Like we need to win it or at least get a draw there. And that's it. So it's the fate is in our hands, essentially. Austin FC can control this and it's up to them to do it. All right, let's move on to Kansas City. I have so many notes for this week's show. Let me reorganize here. All right, what were some of the narratives leading into this one, Jeremiah?
I love watching you do this in real time. Building on momentum from the week. Again, it's a team that Austin should beat at home. Question about how much rotation there was going to be, because Josh did say, I think it was on Friday, maybe on the press conference, or which one of those press conferences, he talked about how specifically that the amount of rest that Austin was getting between the Wednesday and Saturday matches was like not enough, and sports scientists would tell you this, and things like that. So I was super curious to see how much they would rotate. And then he had a discussion with Phil about whether armadillos cause leprosy, which I went back and listened to the comments, and I'm not sure how the journey got there, and I'm honestly not even sure that I like the armadillo mascot or don't thing. But you can tell when you have 2 games in a week. And like Josh is coming off 36 hours after a post game availability. Like that guy's tank is pretty empty. Like you can that second press conference is usually weird or loose or whatever. Like it kind of goes sideways. So not surprised that it went sideways. But yeah, lineup wise, we get we get Valencia for Ring, and we get Wolf for Rigoni, and then the other 9 are the exact same 9 starters that Austin rolled out against Houston. This game had a ton of action, almost from the start.
Yeah, I mean, this one, there's a disallowed goal in the 5th minute. I still want to talk about this goal, even though it didn't count, because it was really nice. And I really liked what Austin was doing in this one. So it's a 10 pass sequence, starting with Dani Pereira, He plays it back to Stuver. And then from there, I think 8 players get at least 1 touch on the ball from that point. I think Owen Wolf and 1 or 2 other guys get 2 touches on the ball, and a really nice just passing sequence to progress the ball. And then in and around the box, I think 4 or 5 guys touch it and get a touch or a deflection on it. It falls to Dani Pereira on the backside, arriving late in the box, and he slots it in to the back post. The initial progressive ball to Obrian was offside. We didn't get a good look at it on the broadcast, but it seems pretty clear that he is offside there. And I saw Moises Chiuyan saying that when he was in the locker room after the game, that Dani was yelling at Obrian while Obrian was talking to the media and said, "Hey, tell him what I told you to say." And essentially made Obrian tell the media that it was my fault that Dani didn't score.
That's right. That's right. Oh man, and we almost got that. So is this right? We still have no Dani Pereira goals at home.
Yeah, I think that's
so.
right.
So I just the place is given sort of his place in the lore of the fandom right now. Like that place is going to explode if he gets one that actually ends up counting too. But yeah, that was disappointing. Then KC answers with a Johnny Russell, constant tormentor of Boston FC, Johnny Russell goal at 19 with assists from Alan Polito and Austin FC legend Memo Rodriguez.
That's right. Yeah, Rodriguez kind of scoops the ball over the top for Polito and behind. He holds it up and then kind of cuts the ball back and creates some space for Russell to run into and plays the ball into Russell's path. He takes 1 touch through traffic in the box and then slots it past Stuver. I think it takes a deflection off of Heinz Eich's foot too. So maybe an initial shot would have been something Stuver could have saved, but after the little touch, it wasn't going to happen. It almost seemed like Polito could have been offside on that initial ball, but I don't know that they looked at it. I think the only thing I'd say here is that maybe Valencia, as that initial ball gets played over, he's tracking Russell through the middle of the field, and then Russell kind of turns on, bumps it up into the next gear and runs past him. And by the time Valencia clocks that, it's too late and he's too far in. So I think Valencia could have kind of tracked with him on that run and not allowed him to receive that ball. But I mean, outside of that, I think it was probably just some good play by Kansas City there.
Yeah, and after that, that's when you get the very audible "Ref, you suck" chant, and I felt like that was deserving on the night. I don't think that the officiating crew had a great performance on the night, because there's a lot of questionable choices. And then Austin gets 2 hot air Obrian goals, 11 minutes apart, one at 28 with an assist from Dani, one at 39 with another assist from Dani. We've been, I think, a little bit critical of Obrian because he hasn't been at the top of his game over the last few weeks, but he definitely shows his potential in this one and doubling his goal output from on the season from 2 to 4.
Yeah, and even in this game, he did some really frustrating things. I think he gets called offside for the Dani goal. I think he got caught offside in just kind of an effort moment where he's 2 yards from the midway line. And so even if he's not watching the line, if you take two steps, jog for 2 steps over this line, you can't be called offside. And I think he was down with an injury before, which is why he's going so slowly, but I don't think he wanted the ball in that moment. And it's okay, this is when you hear coaches talk about suffering for your team, this is a moment where I feel like Obi could have suffered a little bit. And it's okay, jog for 2 steps and receive this ball. And even if you can't run, hold it up for a second and play someone else. But gets called offside there. But yeah, these 2 goals, there's actually a Driussi chance in the box a minute before this goal where it's kind of a similar pattern to the second goal, where break the press, play vertically, have some good combination in the box, ends up with a shot on target in the box. And I think if you look at the stats for this game, we had 12 total shots, but 7 of them were on target. And so that's the kind of efficiency that they were creating here, as far as just like getting into good spaces really quickly and getting high quality shots, not a high volume of shots necessarily. 12 isn't a crazy amount, but getting 7 of those 12 on target is really impressive. And so this first goal comes from Kansas City's playing out of the back. Austin is pressing high, and they were pressing higher in this game in general. They've been playing kind of a 4-2-3-1 defensive shape and kind of muddying up the middle and making teams try to play wide on them. In this game, they went back to the 4-4-2 that we've seen in years past and were pressing a bit more. But they were pressed up on this goal kick. And the center backs kind of put Tim Melia in a tough spot with their passing decisions here, but he doesn't have a lot of time. I think he's trying to send it long and scuffs it, and it doesn't even leave the 18. Danny's able to step in front of a center back, win the ball, crosses up Radoya, and then sees an on-rushing Obrian on the right-hand side, plays it in. Obrian takes the touch to settle, and then slaps it past Melia on that near post. Really good, really well executed by Danny and Obrian there to just capitalize on a mistake and punish them for it. Then that goal in the 38th minute.
He does it again 10 minutes later. Yep.
Yeah. So if you look at how they get here, so this goal starts with Dani Pereira receiving a long ball on the right wing. And then it ends up with him playing a ball to Obrian, who's arriving like past the penalty spot from the left-hand side. And I was like, why did this happen? How did they get there? But there's a set piece that gets cleared out and played back to Stuver. And while that's happening, Obrian falls back just in like defensive cover in case he counters. And so it's a back three of like Obrian, Gallagher, and I don't know, somebody else. I don't remember who else was back there, but they play forward and then it kind of resets again. And everyone just kind of stays in those spots. So Danny stays out on that right wing. Johan Valencia finds him out on the right wing. He runs straight at Basong, their left back. And the movement in the box here was good. You see Rubio runs to the near post. Driussi kind of drops back to that, like the corner of the box there. And then Obrian runs just to the near side of the penalty spot. And so Danny had options in multiple spots, pulling defenders around. He spots Obrian there, finds him. Obrian's able to control the ball and kind of let Memo Rodriguez slide past him, takes one touch the other way, and then takes kind of like a quick, sneaky little left-footed shot. And I think he catches Melia off guard and maybe on the wrong foot a little bit there. But really well done from Valencia to play that pass, Danny to be aggressive and pick out that pass, and then for Obrian to be able to execute and finish it there. Really well done. And a brace for the birthday boy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's true. It's his birthday, too. So then Austin goes to the half, up 2-1, comes out of the half pretty quickly. Driussi scores a goal on a header that, I don't know, it didn't look... There were better attempts that he had on the... Seemed like there were better attempts that he had on the night that didn't go in, but, like, this is the one that counts.
This header was so nice. It was such, like... I think he could have played a much worse header and probably still scored. But so one thing I noticed as the kickoff was approaching. So did you mention the subs at halftime?
No, I did not.
So Zardes and Vicenen were warming up at the half in a way that made me think like they're coming on right now. Like this is not for 10 minutes later. And that's what happens. They pull Rubio and Cascante. And I think basing off of what Wolf said after the game on some of these subs is before the game, there's a few guys who had played a lot, were on heavy minute loads and said, give me what you got. If it's 45, if it's 60, whatever, just leave it all out there. And then I'll get you off whenever you've passed that threshold. And I think that was the case for Rubio probably. And then Cascante, probably some minute load playing into it, but also on a yellow. And so in a game that's been like a little bit hectic already, like, yeah, get him out. Don't risk it. put Vyson in for the second half. But yeah, that goal comes 45 seconds into that half. But as they're approaching kickoff, Driussi calls Zardes over to him, and he's like, they're talking about something, and he's gesturing up that right channel in our attacking half. And I turned to Ashley and I'm like, he just told him where to run and he's going to play him the ball and they're going to score a goal. Just like jokingly.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like, this is what they're
Yeah.
talking about. And then that ends up what's happening. I don't think it could have possibly been what they were actually talking about because of the way that the goal comes about. It was not a thing that you could have necessarily planned that way. But yeah, Stuver boots the ball long off of the kickoff. No, I think it wasn't immediately off kickoff. It was not long after, though. Stuver boots it long. Basong gets to it first, but flicks it behind him, and Zardes is able to pick it up. Zardes is 1v1 with Fontas and just skips past him to the end line. Like, where did that come from? Zardes just like shaking bacon dudes and running past them. But he played a similar situation where he ended up wide left against what's his name? Ethan Bartlow in the Houston game, and does the same thing, gets around him and floats the ball back post. And I think it's like Rigoni just barely misses out on it because the timing is a little bit off. But Zardes does the same thing, beats a guy, lofts the ball backside, and you have Owen and Driussi arriving in that spot. And like, yeah, Driussi doesn't try to hit it hard. He just like cushions it into that far corner. And there's no way any keeper in the league is ever saving this header. Just like that gently floated one back corner against the grain of play. And so the keeper's already moving in that direction. And then it goes like right in that top corner. So really, really nice finish there. And then runs over to the stands and demands a baby.
Yeah. Well, we found out was his baby, which is good. It's not a random baby. Yeah. Then after that, Kansas City sees a good run of the ball. Has quite a bit of possession. Does get one goal back. And maybe I should have been more nervous than I was, but I didn't. I don't know. I wasn't too worried about it at this point in time. After even at 3-2.
Yeah, because even a few minutes before that, Zardes gets that chance where Owen Wolf wins the ball off of Johnny Russell in our defensive third and then lays it off to Driussi. He plays a long direct ball to Obrian, who lays it off one touch to Dani. Dani drives forward and has Owen and Zardes running to his left there and plays it into a gap in the defense. And it's one of those, like, Zardes is just like a step too slow, where if he gets there with Zardes' speed from like 3 years ago, his angle on goal is quite good, but with his speed now, the angle turns into not a great one, and he ends up smashing it against the post.
Hits post, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it could have been well out of reach. And I think that's part of why when Kansas City does score that I wasn't super nervous, because I was like, okay, we've been playing good defensively this season, and we could probably still score another goal. But this Kansas City goal, Austin loses the ball in the attacking third. And I noticed in the moment that Obrian and Driussi were kind of walking back in this moment. And I was like, I hope this doesn't come back to bite us, that they're like, a lot happens and they're still not in the defensive third. And so Kansas City works the ball to their left side where Obrian should have been helping defend. And so everyone has to defend to shift that direction. So Dani steps to the guy that Obrian should have been marking. They played it wider than that. Then Valencia has to step wider. Then Owen, who's playing on that left wing, has to step centrally because the two midfielders are gone. They switch it out to Jake Davis on the other side. And this exact play happens earlier in the game, and Owen closes down, and it leads to nothing. But because Obrian wasn't there, everyone has to shift. They switch it, and there's nobody there to close down the shot. Granted, it was like a career strike from Jake Davis. Like, this was an amazing goal that, like, once he hits it, there's nothing anybody can do. But I think there's quite a bit that could have been done to prevent him from ever even taking that shot. And Obrian ends up getting pulled right after that. Like,
Right after that.
I
yeah,
think a
'cause
few minutes after.
Yeah, he was yeah, I think he was definitely gassed. And then because we had managed to put a curse on the guy, so even though it's 3-2, and you talked about maybe another goal would come later, and it looks like at 82, when Sebastian Driussi has his chance to take a kick from the spot, Austin's going to get his fourth goal. He's going to, I think, what would have been 10 for 10 in his career from the spot, and he doesn't. How did you feel about that in the moment? He misses it. Yep.
And I don't know how many messages after the game on Twitter, in text messages, in group chats, like probably 10 people saying this is Landon's fault.
My defense is it didn't matter. And now he's got his one miss out of the way when it was irrelevant, and he's going to go back to being a killer in the future.
And it's not like I said, I think he's going to miss or I hope he misses. I said, I don't get nervous because he's usually quite good at them. So apologies for believing in my captain. Apologies for having faith in our best player to do a thing he's really good at. But also, Tim Melia has a really, really good record saving penalties as well. So that probably played something into it. And Josh Wolf said after the game, like, this is like it happens. Melia's good. Sometimes you miss him. The next pin that comes up, Drusi's going to take it. And so I don't think anybody's going to think twice about this one again. I did see some screenshots being posted after of Tim Melia being potentially slightly off his line.
I saw those too. It's one of those things that's hard to tell in the moment because he moves sideways. Yeah, and maybe he's off his line, but it's like it's like a split second kind of hair thing on where he is and when the ball's kicked and what frame you're looking at the video. It's like I wasn't too broken up about that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Who else do we want to talk about? Oh, we did. So team of the match day came out. Danny's first team of the match day. Obrion's second team. If you score 2 goals on your birthday, I don't know what you have to do to be first team of the match day, but I guess there must have been some other wingers that had a really good match. And then also like the tifo, I love this tifo. It was a little bit really different, nice. But it was really nice, and it was really, I liked, we'll post a picture, or you can find one if you find one, but I like how much sort of open space there was, right? Because there's like the dragon in the middle, and there are clouds around, but there's like a lot of empty netting that it kind of let like each element of the tifo sort of live on its own. And I like that style because I feel like most ones that we have been like sort of just like one big clump of action, which is, or like image, which is,
they've been like
which
big
is cool
and loud kind of.
Yeah.
And this was a bit simpler, but still really clean, really striking, really effective.
Yeah. So I love that.
Before we wrap up on the game, I want to talk about kind of the management of the last little stretch of the game. So,
oh yeah, let's do that. Okay, so I want to talk about why. Were you talking about Matt Hedges coming in and playing? That's part of it.
Yeah. So before, like, as this penalty gets called, they call Hedges over. He starts putting his jersey on, and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna be up. What did the score? We're gonna be up 4-2.
Would be 4-2.
Right?
Yep.
So they're gonna just kill this game out. And as they missed the penalty, I was like, are they still gonna do this? But then, and I like, this is like old Austin FC fan brain kicking in, and I'm like, oh no, we can still just put him in right now. And that's like a perfectly fine game plan because I have faith in this team to be able to close out a game at that point, which has never happened before. And so they put Hedges on for Driussi, shift to a back 5. And then I want to talk about this stretch towards the end. So right as the clock ticks to 92, Ring chips Finley into the right corner. And he and Zardes win a throw-in. And then 4 corners, 3 throw-ins, and 3 minutes later, Kansas City finally gets the ball back. And this is mostly Jussi Zardes, like Alex Ring just tapping the ball into Zardes, and he just holds it up and then bounces it off a guy for a throw or a corner. He does that for 3 minutes straight, which is amazing. Like, that's so good. And again, just like, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm not going to question it too much. These are things that this team, I wouldn't have trusted them to do 8 weeks ago, much less last year. And they're just doing them now. And I like have faith in them to do these kinds of things, which is amazing.
All right. You want to move on and talk about some Austin FC news? This has been a very we came into this this afternoon thinking this was going to be like a big week and a big newsy show, and then this Rigoni thing makes it even more so. But there's some other good stuff that happened this week, so let's take another break and talk about like those other bits of news. Our premier sponsors are McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, state, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only advertises on this podcast because it's the home of the 2-time reigning Copa champion, soon to be 3 times, hopefully. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are going to be joined shortly by Apple TV's Heath Pearce to preview the San Jose Earthquakes game. But first, let's jump into the quite a bit of news there is to cover. Let's start with the All-Star game, Jeremiah. It was kind of public knowledge by this time last week that this was happening, that Austin was getting this All-Star game, but they finally had the big event. Don Garber came to town, had an event with the mayor and with Precourt down at Antone's. It looked like a cool little event to announce it. Did we actually learn anything new from this event or from any of the surrounding announcements?
Yeah, that was the question, right? It was on Wednesday, so Garber ended up at the game, taking pictures and hanging out and shaking hands and stuff like that. But yeah, we learned that the game will be in Austin. I think it's the first time since 2010 the All-Star game is going to be held in Texas. I love the way that we make things newsy. Notably, the first time it takes place in a soccer-specific stadium within the state of Texas. So, don't know where the other ones were. I guess maybe is the Cotton Bowl or something.
Yeah, maybe.
But we know neither the date nor the opponent. We expect it will be on a Wednesday in late July. I mentioned that will be tough for people who are not accustomed to Texas weather. But looked like a cool event. So the format, right, had been MLS versus random European club, then switched to MLS versus Liga MX, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like 3 years. Then last year, Arsenal switched back to the European format. Arsenal came to the country, crushed MLS, and now this year in Columbus, I believe we get now the MLS versus Liga MX layout again. And it seemed like from some of the quotes from Garber, maybe that would be the deal going forward as these two leagues try to take advantage of this partnership between the two. So maybe that's what we'll see in Austin in 2025.
Yeah, we both said that we'd like to see East-West. If it's not going to be that, I would like it to continue to be the Liga MX thing. I think that has been fun. I think the players like on both sides want to win the game and want to win the skills competition. So there's a bit of actual competition there. And yeah, I think it makes it fun. And like, as skeptical as we and a lot of people are of the motivations between building up the partnership between MLS and Liga MX, all that aside, I think it is quite cool. And I think it is fun to kind of build up the rivalry, build up the connections between these two leagues, these two countries. And so, yeah, if we're not going to get East-West, I'm happy with playing the Mexican All-Stars.
And this is a more fun way to do it than just like the goofy made up midsummer tournament way that we're also doing it. We also, this past week, got MLS player salary dump, the first one of this season. I mean, league-wide, like Leo Messi makes more than many teams. I think it was probably the headline, although not surprising. For Austin,
this is like,
I mean,
MLS nerd Christmas kind of, right? Like,
yeah,
for people who like us who beg for this kind of information to like have to wait until a third of the way through the season for the Players Association to release it. Like it's very exciting when it finally goes up. And I think based on the last couple of years of being an Austin fan, we've mostly gotten just bad presents under this Christmas tree, right?
Absolutely.
But I feel like we got more good ones than bad ones this time. Do you feel that way?
Oh, I do. There's a few. I mean, and the bad ones we kind of knew, right? Like the guys that I think everybody knows are overpaid are the same guys that have been overpaid for a while. And one of them apparently is no longer on the team anymore. Out of that group, I think.
Let's start with the bad surprises.
Oh, okay. Oh, the bad surprises. I would just say
Rigoni,
Rings, Zardes continue to be crazy overpaid, and that's not really a surprise, right? Like
those Rigoni's was like I think a similar number. I don't think it changed a lot. Julio's money went up from $693 in 2023 to $774,000 in 2024. That could have just been like kind of a built-in escalator with maybe some bonuses or something. So it's still probably too high than we would like to see him getting, but not, and the bump doesn't seem crazy to me based on what he started at. And then Justy Zardes goes from $800K in 2023, which I think we all thought was already a little high, and bumps up to a square million this season. So that is higher than you would see just kind of like a normal scheduled pay raise season over season. That's quite a bit higher. And so I'm not sure what that escalator was, but it's there and it will be there next season as well.
Yeah. So that's that news. But on the good side of things, if you look at the guys who are at or under $200,000, you've got Guilherme Biru at exactly 200. You've got Brendan Heinzike at 199. You've still got Dani Pereira at 138, and you've got Owen Wolf at 123. I mean, that's a ton of productivity and value from a group of guys that make collectively less than Justy Zardes.
Yeah. I think some other positives are Ethan Finley. His money is lower than it was in 2023. So he goes from 425 to 306. Matt Hedges. We haven't mentioned Matt Hedges yet, have we?
We haven't mentioned Matt Hedges, and I think
that
was
the
best surprises, right?
Me. Yeah. I mean, he was on $909K guaranteed for Toronto in 2023. And so because he was still on part of a contract, he wasn't sure what it was going to look like, or like if he was going to take a pay cut at all, how much it would be, but it was significant. He going from 909,000 guaranteed to this year 425,000 guaranteed. Like, I think that takes him squarely out of the being overpaid category for me.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
For a guy of his pedigree and like his experience, paying him $425K to come and play, I don't know, 15, 20 games for us this year, like that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and he's been good when he's played. It's just there's like a logjam at center back. So it's not like he's not firing in the back of his own net like Amro Tarek, right? Like it's just there's like not enough minutes to go around for him. So yeah, that one was positive for sure. Brad Stuver continues, which makes sense because he's a keeper under 500,000. That's just kind of the way pay works when you're that position and that age, but still continues to be a great value. And then I don't know how much we know or can go into this, but I thought Matt Bersano making 150,000, but also being on the supplemental roster doesn't seem possible. I
still don't really understand it. The supplemental salary stuff is kind of fuzzy when you read through it anyway. So maybe there's something I'm missing or misinterpreting, but I don't understand how it works that he is on that money and in that roster spot. So I think there was one other interesting one that Obrian is on higher money than he was last year. And I think the reason being for that is whenever, oh God, what's the mechanism that we got him through?
He was re-entry draft, right?
Re-entry draft. Whenever there's a player in the re-entry draft who has an option year on their contract, when you pick them up, you're essentially triggering their option year. And so that's probably the reason why his money is higher, is that was already built in his option year. Like if Dallas had picked up his option year, that's what he was going to get paid. And so if we wanted him, we had to pay him that much.
Yep. Let's go for one more player. We get this is new player. The one official player that we know we're going to get during the offseason is Mikael Dessler. He got a send off. Toulouse's season's over, so we get the like send off loving social media posts from him. Good to see that, because there was a little bit of a time of injury. Good to see.
Seems very popular there too.
Yeah, that was cool to see all the love. So he's healthy again. Right now, he's probably the only summer signing that Austin probably has, but like that really makes the fullback position also another position of strength for this club, which it has not always been.
Absolutely, yeah. I got to watch a couple of the games since he came back from injury. He mostly playing like 60 or 70 minutes in the games he came back, which might end up being a bit of a blessing for Austin, as far as like he sat some time out, came back, was only playing 60 minutes. He'll have another month or two to rest up again and then come back and start getting worked into the Austin team. But man, this guy is... Have I talked about him too much on the show?
No, you haven't. Go ahead.
I am in love with this guy. Like, I think he's going to be a really good MLS player. He's just like a really intelligent player. And I guess like, I don't know what to say about him because I want to say so much, but do you have any questions or like any things you want to know about Dessler?
I guess like what knowing the existing stable of fullbacks, like what elements does his game excite you about him and make you think he's like additive to the overall roster when he's in the starting 11? Like what does he do differently from what we would see out of probably John Gallagher is probably the odd man out at this point, more likely than not.
Yeah, he's very much more in the Biru mold as far as profile and skill set goes. But it's like Biru if he were like a veteran in the prime of his career and just like that much more experience and intelligence on top of that skill set. But he's like not a high flying fullback. We're not getting Kai Wagner, who's going to get 15 or 20 assists from playing crosses in. Like he's not super tricky with the ball. He's not super flashy in anything he does, but his movement and positioning is just elite, like really, really good, always in the right spot, whether it's creating an outlet for a teammate, moving into a space to be an option as the ball swings around to the other side, crashing the box late. And then also when they give the ball away, transition, like defense, like his movement into spaces to kill counterattacks. And then also on top of that, he's got a big frame and can defend in the box. So he's an asset in the box as a fullback. So bringing that size and strength into the defensive side, and then the just like intelligence and experience and now in the attacking half, he's just going to be a really solid two-way player. And like, I think there'll be games where casual fans don't notice him or think about him a lot, but people watching it the way that we do and like our listeners do are probably going to be really impressed with him from the jump.
Well, I'm super excited about that. So he'll be in probably I guess probably during League Cup, but in MLS play after the League Cup break is probably when we should expect to see him.
Yeah, so the official date is July 18th. So it doesn't leave a ton of space on the back end there, but I'm guessing this will be a longer term signing. And again, if Austin can kind of keep up this form for now, like any little bit of help we can get, and then if we can just get him fit and integrated by the time the playoffs start, then that's great.
And then we got one other piece of I don't know if it's news. On Friday, we got this open letter from Rodolfo Burrell to Austin FC fans, kind of talking about. We didn't mention this. So I'm glad that he wrote this letter. We didn't talk about the moment. The letter was about sort of the moment when Austin scored the goal after being pushed to limits both physically and mentally. And in the stadium, it did feel like one of these things where like the crowd just all went nuts and sort of willed this team to win. And so it was super cool to get this sort of unexpected piece on the website and on social media from the sporting director talking about the special energy in the moment and sort of how the fans sort of willed the club to victory.
Yeah. What was your, like, what did you think when you saw this get posted? Because it's kind of a strange thing to happen, right?
It does it. So maybe think of there was like an open letter. Was it last year from Brad Stuver?
Oh yeah,
It was the first season. There was like an open letter when things were going poorly, and I can't remember if it was 2021 or 2023 from Brad Stuver. Maybe think a little bit of that. But it was cool because it was in a positive moment, and there was no trigger. There was no like the Stuver one was very much like, yes, we realize things are terrible. Stay with us, right? But this was just like joy, and so I didn't know what to think about it, but it's great to see from him.
I saw a lot of folks reacting with they're about to announce a price hike
Josh Wolf's extension.
A price hike for 2025 season tickets, or Josh Wolf is going to get extended and they're trying to soften the blow or something. And I mean, maybe, like, it's very possible that that's the case, but I think, like, best case scenario, it's just like a really lovely thing for a guy to do who's new to town, to just give a surprise compliment to his fan base. And in the worst case scenario, I think it's still a pretty nice thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, we have every reason to believe that he was like legitimate and like it was a real piece from the sporting director and not a setup for something else. So, y'all, don't be so cynical. Like, it's just not it's not a great way to carry on with your worldview. Just trust that this guy really loves what he's doing and loves everything that everybody out there in the Austin fan base brings to this club. So let's
All right.
You ready to close out?
Yeah, let's move on to our chat with Heath Pearce. I really like talking to Heath. I think I've said this on the show, but like, former players as the color commentators on broadcasts are some of my favorites because they just see the game differently and so much more clearly than a lot of other folks do. So I really enjoy talking to Heath, and I think y'all will enjoy the insight he gives us. All right, we are thrilled to be joined by our next guest. He is a former soccer player who played in Europe and MLS and for the U.S. men's national team, currently working as an analyst for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. It's Heath Pearce. Heath, thanks so much for joining us again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we're going to be previewing Austin's game against the San Jose Earthquakes. You've actually called quite a few Quakes games this year, haven't you?
I have, yes.
They are a fascinating team to me. One of the most, the MLS-iest MLS teams that exist. Jeremiah, we've already seen them this year. Do you want to run us through kind of their station this year?
Sure. Let's go through that real quick. So currently 14th and last in the Western Conference. To your point, Landon, most goals allowed in the league, 10th in goals scored. So chaos continues to be the name of the day. And I remembered that this game happened, but I forgot who it was against. But yes, Austin on April 6th beat San Jose 4-3 with a Sebastian Driussi goal at 90 plus 11 that made the difference in it. So this is like a long, of all the teams that Austin's played against, I feel like it's the one that sort of has definitely had the most chaotic appearances. So this game in April was definitely in line with that. And also San Jose plays U.S. Open Cup on Tuesday in Sacramento, which I'm not super familiar with whether they're rotating or not in that, but they may be a factor in terms of what happens in Austin over the week. Wait, what happens in San Jose over the weekend against Austin?
Yeah, I mean, I would just jump in real quick on that, and just having had a chance to talk to Coach Lucci, when you go into these, they're coming off of a game this last weekend against Orlando, which I had a chance to call. And those interconference games, sometimes you have some coaches that are like, "Oh yeah, this is our chance to rotate, or we take a flyer on these." It's not these 6-point swings, but he was committed to. Both teams committed to playing primarily their best rosters with the idea that we might have an opportunity for some rotation in the Open Cup versus, any other time. And so there may be some rotation at the Open Cup period, but I would suspect that by then that'll give a little bit of rest to their starting team for this one.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. They did play a pretty tough game against Orlando, probably deserved a bit more than what they got, which ended up being a late goal, ending up in a 1-0 loss. Is this team better than what they're showing, or does this record reflect who they are this year?
It's tough to say. When I had the opportunity to call that game, and maybe they should have deserved to get a point. I would say that Orlando had the better of chances. Most of them were late. A couple big saves from Yarborough in that one to keep it zeros. But they have tools, right? They have a lot of good pieces. The addition of Hernan Lopez is fantastic. What I saw a lot of in that one, though, is that Hernan Lopez, even though he's the 10, he likes to drift out into the wide areas in the space where Christian Espinoza is. Christian Espinoza likes to get the ball in the wide areas, put his head down, whip the ball in. And so there's a little bit of a rhythm that they need to figure out to really utilize some of these tools. When I think about Rodriguez and Bruno Wilson as the center backs, both quality on the ball, both good defenders, but this team has a knack for giving up. You talked about the 4-3 in April, giving up late goals. Not only do they have kind of a history of that going back to last season, but there's also a weird theme with them this year that they haven't been able to, well, I guess in the last few games they've been able to figure out, minus the sort of red card match against Portland. That I think they were a little hard done when giving up a penalty and a red card in that time up 2-0, is the level of which they get punished when they are scored on, right? Or when they're having a moment of suffering, they can concede multiple goals in a small amount of time. And you can look at the full, when, again, you mentioned like maybe they should have gotten more. When you look at the full picture, you're like, oh yeah, a little bit hard done here. But then, in these small windows, they have the ability to get punished. And this one, again, in stoppage time against the Orlando side, who was not really interested in taking a lot of risks. They just killed the middle of the park, forced everything wide. They defended really well. They really, really worked, I think, for what would deservedly be a point in that one. But Orlando, I think statistically, is like maybe 8 games or something like that. They've scored in the final 15, or 8 times this year they've scored in the final 15 minutes of a game. So it's kind of their come-to-life team time in a match. And so it kind of played into all those themes in that one. And again, just kind of there's 3 or 4 mistakes that happen in that sequence where Chakeris tries to keep the ball, rightfully so, at least in his mind, because he's like, oh, we're up on the field, let's keep it. He gets poked away. They run down the field. No one catches him. Then there's an overcommitting in the box. A mishit that happens falls right to the feet of the striker who buries it. And you're like, that's sort of what I think the theme is like when they get punished, they get really punished, even with a little bit of luck and even with a few mistakes. And although we have seen them improve since, I think, the arrival of Hernan Lopez.
Yeah, so you mentioned Lopez. This team is going to look a little bit different than what Austin saw last time. They were missing Jackson Ewell and Preston Judd for cards last time Austin played them. I know Judd has not been starting as much as he was at that point in time, and we saw Bovesi, and that'll probably be the same in this one. But then Amal Pellegrino was just starting to work in. I think he played 20 or 30 against Austin in that game. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned Hernan Lopez. Do you think Pellegrino and Lopez and Espinosa all being on the field together and maybe gaining some chemistry, could that turn them around a little bit and fix this team? Or do you think it's maybe a little bit too little too late at this point?
Well, I actually think if Espinosa and Hernan Lopez can find that rhythm, if they're both setting up either in the half space on the right-hand side or in wide areas, that should be a problem for a team, right? But if they're both parked out there and not being effective, then you've eliminated the 2 best players on the field. You know that Espinosa is always going to get his crosses in, right? He's going to have more volume than anybody in the league throughout a season. But if you've got 2 players parked over there, to me, I just think about those overloads. And like, you've now got 2v1 with a left footer and a right footer in the same way that they're standing over free kicks right now. That should be a killer combo that they've got to find a way to tap into in terms of their style of plays and being complementary to each other. And then when I think about Pellegrino, I think he scored going into this last game three matches in a row, finding his form. Obviously he was a Golden Boot winner in the Norwegian top flight, and it's taken him a while to get going and get used to the type of league. But now going back to back games, going into this one against Orlando, I thought he was a little bit quiet against Orlando. But you're starting to see some of these players that they brought in carrying their load in a lot of ways. And so I do think the dynamic of this is better. I know that there's kind of a cry right now of saying, hey, Gruezo hasn't really been at the clip that we've seen him in seasons past. Is there an opportunity now to drop a Jackson Ewell a step deeper onto the field, let him play the 6 so that you can get a Jack Skane on the field, or you can have more time with Nico Chakeris and have a little bit more of that dynamic of being able to drive the game forward a little bit versus, somebody who sweeps in front of that back line. I think Yule can do that well, but now you've got more players that can actually advance the ball to the players who you want to be dangerous on the field, right? I think when they're predictable, they're easy to play against. When they move the ball quickly and they drive the ball with a player like Jacaris, with a guy on the dribble like Skane, and now you have bigger pieces and better form in Pellegrino and now Lopez. I think it's a team that knocking on the door to something. The final piece I would say right now is that both Judd and Abobasi haven't really found their form. They're knocking on the door. They've had some good moments. They're competing for time. Is there an opportunity to go to a two-striker system? Maybe not. That would then require sort of only two in the midfield at that point in the center of the park. But they are missing just that player that occupies the center backs, that's allowing, Hernan Lopez to float where he wants to, or be just another threat right now. And if one of them finds a top form, then I think you're going to see a lot more isolations on the field. But for now, I don't think those strikers are getting the respect they deserve or the attention they deserve, because they're not really punishing anybody, despite both of them being, serviceable and hardworking strikers.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you've, going back to your time as a player, if you sort of place yourself, if you're in the San Jose locker room like right now, what does that look like? Where it's early still, but things are off to a bad start. I think they had a chaotic identity with Almeida before, and now they switched to Luchi Gonzalez. But does it feel like that like a lot has changed in terms of results on the field? Like, how do you sort of approach the game, and what are you looking to do or looking to prove when you're on the field?
It's funny because I've had an opportunity to deal with the San Jose Earthquakes quite a bit this year, and the theme, eventually gets to a point with Luchi Gonzalez where he's like, "Look, we can't just keep saying we're knocking on the door, right? Because your games are passing, and eventually you have to break out." But he's pretty open and honest about missing being a couple pieces away from being a multi-goal a match team, a team that can break out and score goals in bunches. The flip side to that statistic, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it's like 30-something of Lucci's 40-something matches have all ended in one goal differences of his time at the club. And so even when they're scoring, it's just there's something thematically that is keeping teams in games, right? Whether it's like, hey, we smell some vulnerability of the other team. Let's put this game to bed. Let's put it away. And they don't, or, there's a little bit of that nervousness that creeps in late in matches that allows other teams, especially last year, which they cleaned up later in the season, but early on last season in 2023, it was like, a high percentage of their matches, they were giving up points, in the closing stages of the game. And so when you're in the locker room, you're just looking for that complete result. You're looking at the players you've obviously added an addition in Lopez that I think is going to bring a lot to the team. But when I go back to his first couple of matches outside of, again, that Portland match, which I thought was, an unfair call where they were kind of punished. And you know how it is when you give up a red card. It's one thing. You give a red card and a penalty when you're up 2-0 away from home in a place like Portland. It's just a really, we used to go through these training sessions where you sit for like 50 minutes playing 4 in a back line against 7 or 8, right? You can keep a clean sheet against these guys, wave after wave of attack. But to do it in Portland and do it that long is a really tough task. And so I thought, besides that result, which you can call an outlier, they were rounding into form in terms of their results. And so this one in Orlando, I thought should have been a point for them. They should have been able to be happy. But when you look at, again, the result against against Colorado, when you look at the result against LAFC, huge results for them that you thought, okay, they're turning the corner. And now actually I think the big test is going to be against Austin in this one, because Orlando was very, very well organized. San Jose never really looked to have this identity where we could, at least from the booth, say, oh, this is where the goal's going to come from, right? We saw a few times where they broke the lines of pressure and they had that confidence, and you're like, okay, they've broken out, and it led to their best chances because now they've got possession further up the field. The patterns of play become predictable. The movement, all of that stuff looked a lot better, but it was few and far between. And so I think this is an opportunity for them to really look at their identity and point to, hey, here's how we're going to get results. Like, we can point to that and say, this is the foundational success of our team moving forward. And if we do this, we know that we have a great chance of winning. Whereas against Orlando, I didn't really see it. And then, again, that game in Portland is sort of a write-off. So I think this is the big test for them to really say, can we actually find success? And if we do we have this identity that's gonna, we can go to the videotape every week and say, okay, guys, this is it, right? This is us at our best. And that's to be determined still.
Yeah. One thing I'm really going to be looking for during this game is in most games that Austin has played against San Jose, and this most recent one that ended 4-3. Like, I think I said, Jeremiah, I don't know if you remember what I said, but I said something about like the San Jose Earthquakes being like a kind of drug that like gets the other team kind of high sometimes, and they just start like acting a little crazy. And Austin almost blew that game on multiple occasions because Brad Stuver would make a save and then he would chuck the ball down the field and try to counterattack when it's like 3-3 or something at this point. And it's just like, we need to calm down. We can't play the game that they play. And Austin, I think, frequently has fallen into that trap, and other teams have done it too. You say they've lost a bunch of games by one goal. A lot of those games are 3-2, 4-3. Like, they have some high scoring affairs at times. One thing that Austin's gotten a lot better at since that game is playing a bit more balanced of a game, playing a bit more conservative when they need to, learning to play in transition. Like, offensive transition has been terrible for Austin. Even that season that they were so good, offensive and defensive transition were terrible. And they've been quite good at those things the last little handful of games. And so I'm curious to see if they can be a bit more disciplined and dedicated to their playing style that they've done so good at the last handful of games, or are they going to get high on that San Jose drug and go crazy again and try to get into a track meet that they can't win?
Well, what I would say is, just looking at that Orlando game, is Orlando came with a game plan. They wanted center of the park density, force everything wide. Yes, that plays into the strengths of a Pellegrino or an Espinosa, but there was never a moment where I don't say never, but very few moments in the match where San Jose was able to break out and leave Orlando exposed, right? Every time that they were in transition, there was 5-6 players behind the ball so quick from Orlando, where they were just the professional level of and level of detail, like you're talking about, Orlando had in that one, and it eliminated any real moments of chaos, right? The game never, when you have these stretches sometimes in MLS where second half starts and it kind of lacks rhythm and it opens up a little bit. It did that for about 15 minutes in the second half, like most games do, where it's like a little end-to-end stuff. They're kind of finding their legs again. But for the most part, Orlando did a really good job of not getting caught in the sort of swing of transitions where now they've, you lose the ball, a player overcommits. Now they've broken it. Now they're on the run. The next player steps out. He gets beat. And now you're in this vulnerable position. They always sort of delayed, got numbers behind the ball, and then forced San Jose to have to find almost a moment of magic or break them down in numbers. And I thought it was a really, while it wasn't the most entertaining display of soccer from Orlando in this one, playing away from home, the sort of principles they stuck to, but more importantly, the discipline they had within those principles was impressive. And I think to do that for a complete match is a huge challenge, right? Because the grind is a rewards-based system, and it didn't look like there was rewards coming other than a point, right? But if you're Orlando, they need points. They want points. They looked at that game as a 3-point opportunity. So when you grind like that for long periods, it's to get buy-in from all 11 players on your team, I think is really impressive. And so when I think about Austin, if you can have that it's a rewards-based system, but if you can have that discipline to say, hey, we're going to play our game, we're going to get our moments, we're going to have a chance to have some strings of possession. But like, our foundation has to be this organized system that doesn't allow us to have 5 in one half, 5 in the other, and now all of a sudden you're creating chaos where a Hernan Lopez or a Pellegrino or an Espinosa can punish you because they've whipped the ball in behind your back line before you've been able to set up and those types of things. So I think there's probably a lot right now that Wolfie's looking at in terms of that performance from Orlando and some of the success that they had of just never exposing themselves much. And then you add that to the attacking quality and the confidence of Austin right now, and it should be a fantastic match.
Yeah, well, Austin has not minded making games ugly on the road, so we'll see if they're able to stick to those principles while still actually playing a little bit of soccer this time.
Well, I've wanted to. So you mentioned the coach. Like you guys, I mean, you're quite a bit younger than Josh Wolf, but like y'all on the national team at the same time. Did you overlap a little bit?
Yeah,
Do you have any
did.
embarrassing? You have any embarrassing stories about him you want to tell to us tonight that we can hold against him? Or
Honestly, I don't. I just remember, him as a player and competitor, and just how one of the most explosive first couple steps I'd ever seen, just in terms of spatial awareness, back to the game, the way that he could shift his body and move, like just really difficult to play against. But was also one of the guys that, when you get into the national team, there is a little bit of a code of generational players and these types of things, but he was always one that was like super helpful to me, and one that, as I made my way back to MLS, my first match with FC Dallas was in KC, and I got a chance to chat with him, and just those are the little tiny memories that you remember of somebody. And then obviously, kind of the war stories on the field. But yeah, I wish I've got a lot of embarrassing stories of a lot of people. So maybe we just never ended up in the same place. Yeah. Maybe he has a few embarrassing ones of me, but yeah, I don't remember anything that he did that I can hold against him. At least not right now.
All right. Well, listeners, you can catch Heath. And are you with Mark Rogandino this week again?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Heath and Mark will be on the call on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. We're looking forward to listening to you, and good luck on the call.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me, guys.
All right. We want to thank Heath one more time. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet. I'm at LVHero87, and Jeremiah's at JBentley_ATX on Twitter. And then we're at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Sign up for the Patreon. Jeremiah, are we sending out stuff this next weekend? Is that right?
that's the plan.
Okay. So if you want to get in on this first batch, we will send it out this weekend if you are signed up by then. If you are not signed up by then, I will get it to you when I have time. I think that's all. So thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a review of the San Jose match, and then another double game week with Portland and RSL, and then any of the other Austin FC news of the week. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, you never.
La gente
Oh my God.